Rain lashed against Sophia Carter's face, stinging like frozen needles as she stumbled through the vast Greyhound terminal parking lot. Her lungs burned with exertion. Her designer heels, those emblems of her mother's insistence on presentability, were now 3 blocks away, abandoned ignominiously next to a dumpster in a grimy alley. At 22, she was shoeless and running for her life. "Check the bus station. Mr. Carter wants his daughter found." A man's voice crackled through a radio, chilling her to the bone. Sophia ducked behind a rusted sedan, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs, threatening to fracture them. The backpack, containing merely a change of clothes, her laptop, and a pilfered $200 from her mother's purse, suddenly felt like an unbearable 1,000-pound weight. She had braced herself for a difficult escape, but not for her father to dispatch a security team within the hour. Through the deluge, she spotted them. 3 men in stark black suits, jarringly out of place in a drab bus terminal at 11 o'clock on a Thursday night. They fanned out, scrutinizing faces, brandishing a phone. Her pictured, no doubt, that perfect manufactured family photo from last Christmas, where she had smiled for the camera while her soul withered inside. Sophia's fingers trembled as she clutched the tattered wedding invitation in her coat pocket. Gold lettering on cream cardstock proclaimed, "Mr. and Mrs. James Carter request the honor of your presence at the marriage of their daughter, Sophia Marie Carter, to Mr. Richard Castellano." She had unearthed it 2 days prior in her father's study. Her wedding, meticulously planned without her knowledge, arranged without her consent. Richard Castellano, 53 years old, twice divorced, and currently under investigation for securities fraud. He was her father's business partner, the man who, with a single phone call, had somehow made a federal case vanish. The bitter realization of the price of that favor clenched Sophia's gut. "No," she whispered into the relentless rain. "No, no, no!" One of the security guards turned, scanning in her direction. Sophia's breath hitched. She had to move, and quickly. That's when her gaze landed on it, a sleek black Mercedes-Benz, idling in the deepest shadows at the far end of the lot, away from the overhead lights. Its windows were tinted in impenetrable dark. Its engine hummed like a slumbering panther. Crucially, the driver's seat was empty. Sophia didn't deliberate. There was no time for thought, only action. She ran, her bare feet slapped against the wet asphalt as she sprinted toward the car. Behind her, a shout sliced through the rain. She didn't look back. Reaching the Mercedes, she yanked open the rear door and flung herself inside. The interior exhaled the scent of rich leather, mingled with something metallic she couldn't quite identify. Rainwater dripped from her soaked hair onto the opulent upholstery. Sophia pulled the door shut as silently as her shaking hands would allow, then immediately crouched on the floor behind the driver's seat. Making herself as diminutive as possible, through the darkened windows, she saw flashlight beams sweeping across the parking lot. Her father's men were closing in. She pressed her hand over her mouth, stifling her ragged breathing. "Please don't find me. Please don't find me. Please." The driver's door creaked open. Sophia's entire body went rigid. A gust of cold air rushed into the car, carrying the familiar scent of rain, and something else. Gunpowder. Blood. Someone slid into the driver's seat with a barely suppressed grunt of pain. The door closed. For 3 agonizing heartbeats, silence reigned. Then, a voice, masculine, low, and edged with an undeniable danger, cut through the stillness. "You have 5 seconds to tell me who sent you before I put a bullet in your head." Sophia's survival instinct screamed at her to remain hidden, but her body betrayed her. She slowly raised her head, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. The man in the driver's seat was turned halfway around, his gaze piercing her with the coldest gray eyes she had ever encountered. He appeared to be perhaps 30, with dark hair plastered to his forehead by the rain, and a face that seemed carved from marble, all sharp angles and unyielding edges. His left hand gripped the steering wheel, his right held a gun pointed directly at her face, but it was the blood seeping through his white shirt just below his ribs that made Sophia's breath catch. "I asked you a question," he reiterated, his voice steady despite the obvious pain, an American accent with a smoother, underlying cadence that spoke of East Coast old money. "Please," Sophia heard herself say, the word emerging as a broken whisper. "Please don't take me back to them." The man's expression remained impassive, yet something flickered in those granite eyes. The gun did not waver. Back to who? My father? His men? Her voice cracked. She was so weary, so terrified. The adrenaline was plummeting, and suddenly Sophia could no longer hold back the tears. I can't go back. I can't marry him. I won't. For a long moment, the man simply stared at her. Rain drummed rhythmically on the Mercedes roof. Somewhere in the distance, men were still shouting, still searching. Then, slowly, he lowered the gun. "Marco?" he said, and Sophia realized he was speaking into an earpiece she hadn't noticed. "We have a situation." The front passenger door opened. Another man appeared, older and built like a linebacker, also armed. He took one look at Sophia, huddled on the floor, and raised an eyebrow. "Boss?" The driver's gray eyes never left Sophia's face. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, almost thoughtful. "She's scared, not stupid." A pause. "And she just said something very interesting." "What do we do with her?" The man with the gray eyes tilted his head slightly, studying Sophia as if she were an intricate puzzle he hadn't yet decided whether to solve or destroy. "We take her with us," he declared finally. "I want to know exactly why someone's desperate enough to hide in my car." He turned back to face the windshield and started the engine. As the Mercedes pulled smoothly out of the parking lot, Sophia caught one last glimpse of her father's security team, standing dejectedly in the rain, utterly oblivious that she was slipping away right under their noses. She had escaped one nightmare, yet remained unaware that she had unwittingly stumbled into something far more dangerous. The Mercedes glided through the dark streets like a shark through deep waters. Sophia pulled herself up from the floor onto the back seat, her wet clothes leaving damp imprints on the luxurious leather. She no longer cared. Through the tinted windows, she watched her city undergo a nocturnal metamorphosis. The familiar downtown skyline gave way to industrial blocks she had never seen before. Warehouses with shattered windows, streets without names, places her father had likely warned her about since childhood. The man in the driver's seat, her captor, her potential savior, she couldn't yet tell which, drove with one hand on the wheel. His other hand pressed firmly against his wounded side. Every few seconds his jaw would clench, the only outward sign of his pain. "You're bleeding," Sophia stated quietly. "I'm aware. You need a hospital. I need answers." His gray eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. "Starting with your name?" Sophia hesitated. What was the point of deception now? "Sophia Carter." The man beside him, Marco, stiffened perceptibly. He pulled out his phone and began typing rapidly. "Carter," the driver repeated. "As in Carter Construction, the company building half of downtown." Her stomach plummeted. "You know my father?" "I know of him." A chilling coldness entered his voice. "Which makes this very interesting." The Mercedes veered down an alley so narrow Sophia felt she could have touched both walls if she'd reached out the windows. They approached what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse. Rusted doors, a broken loading dock, graffiti defacing every surface, except for the security camera cleverly hidden in the eaves, which Sophia almost missed. The massive garage door rolled up silently. They drove inside, and it closed behind them with a heavy clang that sent Sophia's heart racing anew. The interior was starkly different from the exterior. Clean concrete floors, professional lighting, and at least 6 armed men, all turning to stare at the car. "Boss is hurt," Marco said into his phone before they had even parked. "Get Doc ready." The driver killed the engine and sat still for a moment, as if marshalling his strength. Then he opened his door and stepped out in one fluid motion that must have cost him considerable effort. When he straightened to his full height, Sophia realized how tall he was, at least 6'2", with broad shoulders beneath that blood-soaked shirt. Marco came around and opened Sophia's door. "Out!" Slowly she climbed out on shaking legs. The warehouse felt like a tomb, cold and echoing. All 6 armed men had moved closer now, forming a loose circle. Their eyes held the flat, empty look of individuals who had witnessed violence and felt nothing. One of them, younger than the others, with a scar across his eyebrow, raised his weapon and pointed it at Sophia's chest. "She could be wired. Lorenzo could be leading them right to us." Lorenzo? So that was his name. "Lower it, Tony," Lorenzo said, his voice level. "But boss," I said, "lower it." This time, there was steel beneath the quiet words. Tony hesitated, then dropped the gun to his side, but his eyes remained hostile. Lorenzo turned to face Sophia fully for the first time since they had left the bus station. Even wounded and soaked with rain and blood, he carried himself like a king surveying his dominion. He studied her, truly looked at her, and Sophia felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with her wet clothes. "She's scared, not stupid," Lorenzo said, addressing his men but watching her intently. "Scared people run toward safety, not into danger. Unless," he stepped closer, "unless danger is exactly where they were sent." Sophia's throat went dry. "I don't understand. Don't you?" Lorenzo circled her slowly, like a detective meticulously examining crucial evidence. "Imagine the staggering improbability. The very night a shadowy assailant tries to end my life, James Carter's daughter materializes in my car. A coincidence?" Sophia's mind raced, replaying the blood, the gun. "I didn't know," she insisted, her voice trembling. "I swear I didn't know whose car it was. I just saw it idling, and I needed to hide." A cold dread washed over her as she realized the cruel irony. She had inadvertently chosen the vehicle belonging to the man her father most desperately wished dead. Those words, "My father wants you dead," hit her with the force of an icy wave. Lorenzo ceased his circling, now close enough for her to discern the lingering raindrops in his hair, and the weariness etched below the suspicion in his eyes. "You genuinely don't recognize me, do you?" "No." "And your father never mentioned the name Lorenzo Vitali?" Sophia shook her head, the name utterly meaningless to her. Marco, who had been engrossed in his phone, looked up. "Boss, she's telling the truth about running away. A missing person report was filed an hour ago. The police are actively searching for her." "Or," Tony interjected, "that's precisely the fabricated story they'd concoct." Lorenzo raised a hand, commanding silence. He scrutinized Sophia's face for what felt like an eternity. She fought the urge to avert her gaze, even as every instinct screamed to flee, though escape was nowhere to be found. "Tell me something," Lorenzo finally said, his voice low. "These men pursuing you at the bus station, they're your father's security, aren't they?" "Yes." "And what transpires if they apprehend you?" Sophia's hands clenched into fists. "They'll drag me back. My father will marry me off to his business partner. I'll become property in a deal I never consented to." A subtle shift occurred in Lorenzo's expression. For a fleeting moment, the icy facade fractured, revealing a raw intensity beneath, perhaps recognition, or a surge of memory. "Marco," he commanded quietly, "escort her to the holding room. Ensure she has dry clothes, water, and food." "Lorenzo," Tony began, clearly about to object. "She remains here tonight," Lorenzo interrupted, his gray eyes meeting Sophia's again. "Under guard. Tomorrow, when the bleeding has stopped and my mind is clear, we'll ascertain whether you are an accident or a trap." He spun on his heel, walking toward a door at the rear of the warehouse. Each step was deliberate and controlled, despite the wound in his side. One of his men scurried after him. Marco motioned to Sophia with his gun, a polite but undeniable threat. "This way, Miss Carter." As she followed him deeper into the warehouse, past rooms that resembled a military installation, Sophia grasped a terrible truth. She had fled one cage only to find herself entrapped in another. The sole distinction was that this new cage held a man who had looked at her and seen a reflection of himself. The holding room was in fact a small apartment, complete with a bedroom, bathroom, and a barely used kitchenette. Marco left her with a towel, sweatpants, and a t-shirt that dwarfed her frame before the door locked from the outside. Sophia dried off and changed, then sank onto the edge of the bed, her gaze fixed on nothing. Her phone remained in her backpack, powered off, its battery removed. Her father could track anything. She had learned that lesson the hard way at 16. Attempting to visit a friend of whom he disapproved, she lost all sense of time. Minutes, hours, as if time itself had shattered. When the door finally opened again, Lorenzo stood framed in the doorway. He had changed into a black Henley, and his wound was clearly stitched. A white bandage peeked from beneath his shirt. His face appeared less pallid, but exhaustion still shadowed his eyes. He carried 2 bottles of water and a bag exuding the scent of Chinese takeout. "You need to eat," he stated, stepping inside. Marco appeared behind him, maintaining guard in the doorway without entering. Sophia remained motionless. "Are you going to kill me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "That depends," Lorenzo replied, placing the food and water on the small table. "Are you going to tell me the truth?" "I already did." "No," he corrected. He pulled out a chair and sat down slowly, as if his side still pained him. "You informed me you were running. You omitted why your father would file a missing person report while simultaneously dispatching private security to drag you home. You also failed to mention Richard Castellano." Sophia's head snapped up. "How do you—" "I make it my business to know things," Lorenzo finished. He opened one of the water bottles and slid it toward her. "Castellano is currently under federal investigation. Securities fraud, insider trading, potential RICO charges. 3 months ago, the case was airtight. 2 weeks ago, the lead prosecutor dropped it. No explanation. The files were sealed." Her hands trembled as she reached for the water bottle, needing something tangible to hold. "My father made a call." "One call does not make federal charges vanish," Lorenzo countered. "It does when you know which senators accepted bribes for construction contracts, when you know which judges maintain offshore accounts, when you've dedicated 30 years to constructing a construction empire on blackmail and bribery rather than legitimate work." The words spilled from Sophia like poison she had restrained for too long. "My father doesn't build buildings, Mr. Vitali. He builds leverage." Lorenzo leaned back, studying her intently. "And Castellano required my father's leverage to dissolve his legal woes," Sophia explained, her voice cracking. "My father needed Castellano's connections to circumvent his own audit. The marriage was the seal on their deal. Castellano gains a young wife who presents well in photographs and lends him an air of respectability. My father acquires a partner capable of manipulating markets and concealing money. And you get traded like property," Lorenzo observed. "I get to smile and be grateful," she finished, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "I received the invitation 2 days ago. Gold lettering, a spring wedding. They'd already booked the venue. I wasn't even going to be asked, merely told when to appear." Marco shifted in the doorway. Lorenzo's expression remained inscrutable, but something in the set of his jaw had hardened. "Your father's construction company," Lorenzo said slowly, "Carter Construction. They're currently engaged in 3 major projects downtown. 5, actually," Sophia corrected. "The 2 towers on Broad Street, the convention center, the hospital expansion, and the waterfront development." "Who is funding the waterfront project?" Sophia frowned. "I don't know. My father keeps the financial details private." "Why does Morelli Holdings?" The name meant nothing to her. Sophia shook her head. Lorenzo rose and walked to the small window, gazing out at nothing. When he spoke again, his voice was quiet, dangerous. "Don Morelli, he controls the docks, the unions, half the politicians in this city. For the past 5 years, he's been attempting to legitimize his money through construction contracts. And your father has been his personal laundromat." Sophia's stomach plummeted. "You're saying my father works for organized crime?" "I'm saying your father washes organized crime's money and euphemistically labels it construction." Lorenzo turned to face her. "Which means, when you ran away tonight, when you stumbled into my car," he paused, "you ran from the devil straight into his enemy." The room seemed to tilt around Sophia. "You and this Morelli, you have a history." The way Lorenzo spoke confirmed it was a history written in blood. "He wants me dead. I want him in the ground. It's been a stalemate for 2 years, because neither of us can make a move without igniting a war that would devastate half the city." Sophia stood up, backing away. "So, what am I? A hostage? Leverage?" "You're an opportunity." Lorenzo moved closer, and Sophia saw a calculating gleam enter his eyes. "James Carter's daughter, missing, terrified, and willing to speak about Daddy's illicit business dealings." He tilted his head. "Tell me, Sophia, how much do you truly know about your father's financial records?" She thought about all those nights watching her father work in his study, all the times he'd left his laptop open while taking phone calls. "I used to help him with paperwork when I was in college, before he decided I should be decorative instead of useful. I still have access to some of his old cloud accounts. He never changed the passwords." Lorenzo's eyes lit up, like a man who had just drawn a winning hand. Can you access them now? Maybe, if he hasn't locked me out yet, but I don't understand what... Your father has been shielding you from his world, keeping you oblivious, keeping you pristine. Lorenzo stepped closer. But now you are in my world, and in my world, information is currency. You desire freedom from your father's schemes, don't you? Sophia nodded slowly. Then help me dismantle the man who has enabled those schemes. Lorenzo's voice dropped to a near whisper. Help me take down Morelli. When he falls, your father's empire falls with him. No arranged marriage, no more cage. And if I refuse, Lorenzo met her gaze, then I will place you in a car tomorrow morning and return you to your father with a polite note. You will be married to Richard Castellano by the end of the month, and this night will simply become a bad dream. Sophia's heart hammered. She envisioned her father's study, the wedding invitation, Richard Castellano's hand on her shoulder at the last charity gala, his fingers possessively digging in. Then she thought of the cold-eyed man before her, offering something no one else ever had, a weapon to fight back. I'll help you, she said. Lorenzo smiled, though the smile didn't reach his eyes. Then, welcome to the war, Sophia Carter. Dawn filtered through the warehouse windows like an unwelcome guest. Sophia had spent the night on the bed, unable to sleep, listening to muffled voices and footsteps beyond her locked door. At some point, someone had slipped a cup of coffee and a breakfast sandwich under the door. She had eaten mechanically, tasting nothing. When Lorenzo finally came for her, he looked worse than he had the previous night. Dark circles underscored his eyes, and he moved with the careful precision of someone managing pain. We're leaving, he said without preamble. Where are we going? Somewhere Morelli doesn't know about, he replied, gesturing towards her backpack. Bring everything. We are not returning here. 20 minutes later, Sophia found herself in the back of a different car, a nondescript gray sedan that looked like it belonged to a soccer mom. Marco was driving. Lorenzo occupied the passenger seat, his phone occasionally commanding his attention as he issued hushed directives. Their journey led them northward, away from the bustling industrial zone, and into neighborhoods that grew progressively more desolate. Eventually, they halted before what appeared to be an abandoned chapel, its stone walls cloaked in ivy, stained glass windows opaque and dust-laden, and a wooden door hanging precariously from its hinges. You're joking, Sophia exclaimed. It was decommissioned 15 years ago, Lorenzo stated, exiting the vehicle. The archdiocese sold it to a developer who subsequently went bankrupt. It's been in legal limbo ever since. Nobody even remembers its existence. He was undeniably correct. The chapel occupied a forgotten corner lot, encircled by overgrown trees and a rusty fence, evoking imagery from a Gothic novel. Inside, the space was surprisingly pristine, clearly having been prepared. A cot with blankets, water bottles, and canned food were neatly stacked on what was once the altar, alongside a battery-powered lamp and a first aid kit. One of my safe houses, Lorenzo clarified. I have 6 scattered across the city. This one is the quietest. Marco conducted a swift perimeter check, then gave Lorenzo a reassuring nod. All clear, boss. I'll be outside. Once alone, Lorenzo slowly moved to a dusty pew and sat down, his hand instinctively going to his injured side. In the dim light filtering through the stained glass, he appeared almost human-weary, mortal. Sophia placed her backpack on the floor and faced him. So, what now? You stash me in a church while you wage war against a mob boss? That's the strategy? For how long? As long as it takes to settle affairs with Morelli. Lorenzo met her gaze. It could be weeks, it could be months, but you'll be under my protection, secure. No one will dare touch you. The word protected sent a sharp pang through Sophia's chest. Protected like a possession, an object to be guarded, kept, and controlled, much like her father had always treated her. No, she declared. Lorenzo raised an eyebrow. No, I didn't flee one cage just to confine myself to another. Sophia crossed her arms, a sense of defiance stiffening her posture. I'm not some damsel who needs to be hidden away while the men handle business. Sophia, I possess information you require, access to my father's files. I know his schedule, his contacts, his security protocols. Her voice gained strength. You wish to dismantle Morelli? You'll need to dismantle my father, too. and I am the sole person who can assist you in accomplishing that." Lorenzo regarded her intently for a prolonged moment. "Do you comprehend what you're offering? This isn't corporate espionage. Morelli's people terminate informants, slowly. I understand that if I remain in this chapel and wait, I'll still be that same terrified girl hiding in the back of a car." Sophia took a step closer. "I do not require saving, Mr. Vitali." A fleeting emotion crossed Lorenzo's face. He averted his gaze toward the stained glass window, depicting some long-forgotten saint. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she had ever heard it. "I once thought like you," he confided. 17 years old, too proud to accept help from anyone. My father had just died, murdered actually, by people he considered friends. I inherited his debts, his enemies, his wars. He absently touched his wounded side. I told everyone I didn't need saving, that I'd handle it myself. What happened? I nearly died, multiple times. Lorenzo turned back to her. Then someone I barely knew, a man who owed my father nothing, pulled me out of a burning warehouse. Took a bullet doing it. He told me something I never forgot. What? He said, "Pride is a luxury for people who aren't being hunted." Lorenzo rose, moving closer until they were only a few feet apart. "Let me ask you something, Sophia. If you had known whose car you were climbing into last night, if you had known I was wounded and dangerous and everything your father taught you to fear, would you still have gotten in?" Sophia recalled the rain, the fear, the desperation. Yes. Why? Because desperate people don't have the luxury of perfect choices. We take the options we're given and hope they don't destroy us. A faint smile tugged at Lorenzo's lips. Neither did I, until someone tried. The words hung suspended between them. Sophia realized she was witnessing something unexpected in this cold, dangerous man. Recognition. He understood what it felt like to be trapped, to be hunted, to run out of options. "Here's what I'm offering," Lorenzo articulated. "Not protection, partnership. You help me access your father's records. I help you stay alive long enough to use them. When this is over, you walk away free. No ties, no obligations. And if we fail, then we probably both die." He extended his hand. "But at least we'll die fighting instead of hiding." Sophia looked at his outstretched hand. She contemplated everything she had lost in the preceding 24 hours. Her home, her family, her entire future. But standing in this abandoned chapel at dawn, confronting a man who should terrify her, but somehow didn't, she realized she had also gained something invaluable. A choice. A genuine one. She took his hand. His grip was firm, warm, and utterly steady despite the injury in his side. "Partners," she declared. "Partners," Lorenzo agreed. "Now, let's burn your father's empire to the ground." Outside, the sun continued its ascent over the city, indifferent to the war being declared in its forgotten corners. The news broke before they could even depart the chapel. Marco burst through the door, phone in hand, his expression grim. "Boss, we have a problem." Lorenzo was instantly on his feet despite his injury. "What is it? Turn on the news. Any channel." Marco pulled up a live stream on his phone. A perfectly coiffed reporter stood outside Sophia's family mansion, microphone in hand, her face etched with manufactured concern. "Devastating news for the Carter family this morning. Sophia Carter, 22-year-old daughter of prominent businessman James Carter, has been reported kidnapped. Police say she was last seen leaving the family home around 10 p.m. last night. Her father is offering a $50,000 reward for any information leading to her safe return." The camera cut to James Carter himself, standing on the mansion steps. Sophia felt her stomach churn. He looked flawless, the epitome of a concerned father, silver hair slightly disheveled, as if he had been up all night with worry. His eyes were reddened. Was he actually weeping? "My daughter is everything to me," he said, his voice breaking in all the right places. "Sophia, if you can hear this, baby, please come home. Whatever happened, whatever scared you, we can fix it. Just come home." That lying... Sophia's hands clenched into fists, but the reporter hadn't finished. "Police are investigating all leads, including unconfirmed reports that Miss Carter was seen near a downtown bus terminal last night. Sources say her father's security team tracked her there before losing the trail. There are also rumors, and we stress these are unconfirmed, that organized crime may be involved. Lorenzo's jaw tightened. The scene switched to another reporter, this one outside police headquarters. While authorities have not named any suspects, sources within the department tell us they're looking into known associates of Lorenzo Vitali, the alleged crime boss who has eluded prosecution for over 5 years. Vitali was reportedly in the same area as Miss Carter last night, though police stress this may be coincidental. Coincidental, Marco muttered. Right. Lorenzo snatched the phone and ended the stream. His face had become cold, calculating. How fast did this spread? It's on every news channel, local and national. Twitter's exploding with it. Find Sophia Carter is already trending. Marco ran a hand through his hair. Your name is in half the tweets. Morelli, Lorenzo said quietly. He's pushing the narrative, connecting me to her disappearance publicly. If anything happens to her now, you're the first suspect, Sophia finished. She felt dizzy. My father's playing the worried parent while painting you as the villain, and Morelli's amplifying it because if I'm arrested for kidnapping, his biggest problem disappears into a federal prison. Lorenzo began pacing, deep in thought. And your father gets you back, forces you into that marriage, and keeps his empire intact. We need to move. This chapel might be forgotten, but it won't stay that way. Half the city is looking for her now, Marco asserted. Lorenzo nodded sharply. Get the car. We're going to the Maple Street location. Boss, that's just an apartment. No security, no backup. Exactly. They'll be watching the warehouses, the known properties. They won't expect us to hide her in plain sight. He turned to Sophia. Can you look different? Different enough that people won't recognize you? Sophia thought about the girl in the news footage. Designer clothes, professionally styled hair, perfect makeup. Yes, but I'll need supplies. Marco, stop at a drugstore on the way. Baseball cap, sunglasses, keep your head down. Lorenzo looked at Sophia. From now on, you're not Sophia Carter. You need a new name. Like what? Something common, forgettable. He considered for a moment. Elena Costa. It's Italian, but not unusual. Works with your features. Elena Costa, Sophia repeated silently, trying it on like an ill-fitting coat. It felt wrong. But then again, Sophia Carter had felt wrong for 22 years too. 2 hours later, Sophia stood in a small bathroom in a modest apartment on Maple Street, staring at a stranger in the mirror. The drugstore had provided everything she needed: cheap hair dye, scissors, reading glasses with clear lenses, different makeup. She had cut her long, dark hair to her shoulders, dyed it a mousy brown, and learned that without the expensive highlights and professional styling, she looked completely ordinary. Elena Costa stared back at her from the mirror. No one would look twice at this girl on the subway. No one would recognize the eyes in the grainy news photos. The apartment itself was as anonymous as her new appearance. A single-bedroom apartment with a compact kitchen and furnishings that seemed sourced from a budget outlet. It was the epitome of a place where neighbors were deliberately unobservant, and inquiries about the reserved young woman in 3B were simply not made. Sophia Elena pressed her hands against the sink, examining her reflection. Somewhere, her father was orchestrating the image of a distraught parent. The police were actively searching, and the media was teeming with speculation. Meanwhile, she was holed up in an unfamiliar apartment with a man whom much of the city considered a criminal. Are you okay? Lorenzo's voice echoed from the doorway. She turned to face him. He had changed into different attire, a baseball cap pulled low, an attempt to blend into anonymity in a city suddenly scrutinizing him. I don't recognize myself, she stated softly. Lorenzo entered the small bathroom. In the confined space, he appeared even taller, more commanding. Yet, as his gaze met her reflection in the mirror, his expression softened. Good, he affirmed. That means it's working. He then paused, adding, For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you signed up for. Sophia Elena countered, I signed up to dismantle my father's empire. I didn't realize how quickly he would weaponize my disappearance. She met his eyes in the mirror. He's skilled at that, twisting a situation until he's the victim. Morelli is too. Lorenzo leaned against the doorframe. They're both playing the same game now, which means we need to play smarter. How? She inquired. First, we keep you invisible. Elena Costa lives here, pays her rent punctually, and causes no trouble. Just another girl in the city. His gray eyes held hers. Second, we begin to meticulously examine your father's files. Quietly, carefully, we need evidence that definitively links Morelli to Carter Construction. And third, a dangerous smile curved Lorenzo's lips. Third, we make them believe they are winning. Let them grow complacent. Let them think I'm disoriented, that you're terrified, and that their strategy is unfolding perfectly. He pushed away from the doorframe. People tend to make mistakes when they believe they've already triumphed. Elena Costa gazed at the stranger in the mirror once more. Somewhere out there was Sophia Carter, the flawless daughter, the ornamental trophy, the girl who smiled, complied, and never created problems. That girl was no longer present. "Let's make them regret underestimating me," she declared. Lorenzo's smile broadened. "Now you're thinking like a Vitali." 3 days elapsed in an eerie, suspended silence. Elena Costa, as she now had to conceive of herself, settled into a routine that felt both alien and strangely reassuring. She rose early, brewed coffee in the minuscule kitchen, and dedicated hours on her laptop to accessing her father's archived cloud accounts. Marco appeared twice daily with food and supplies, consistently checking the perimeter and vigilantly scanning for any tails. Lorenzo arrived each evening, always after darkness fell. On the third night, he appeared carrying takeout bags, moving with noticeably less stiffness than before. The wound in his side was clearly mending. Elena had discreetly observed him stretching that morning, believing she wasn't watching, testing his range of motion, ensuring he was prepared for whatever lay ahead. "Thai or Chinese?" he asked, setting the bags on the small kitchen counter. He extracted containers, pad thai, spring rolls, and a curry emitting an incredible aroma. Elena realized she hadn't consumed a proper meal since before she fled. Marco's daily provisions consisted of practical sandwiches, protein bars, nothing with flavor or thoughtful preparation. This felt distinct, intentional. They settled at the small table by the window, the curtains drawn. Lorenzo had removed his jacket, revealing the edge of a bandage peeking from beneath his black t-shirt. He caught her glance. "It's healing," he announced, serving food onto paper plates. "Clean through, no significant damage." "You were fortunate." "I was careless," he countered, meeting her gaze. "I let my guard down for 10 seconds, and someone put a bullet in me. In this life, carelessness can get you killed." Elena toyed with her pad thai. "Is that what this is? Teaching me to be less careless?" "I'm teaching you to survive," Lorenzo clarified, taking a bite of a spring roll and chewing thoughtfully. "You've been in hiding for 3 days. How does it feel?" "Like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop." "Good. That means your instincts are sharp." He nodded towards her laptop, closed on the counter. "Find anything useful?" "Perhaps. My father has a folder labeled Waterfront Financials. It's encrypted, but I know his patterns. Give me another day or two." She set down her fork. "The news is still covering my kidnapping. My father held a press conference this morning. He cried on camera." Lorenzo's expression darkened. "I saw. He's adept at this. The performance. Making people believe he's something he's not." Elena's voice flattened. "When I was 8, he completely forgot my birthday. But the next day, he threw this huge party. Ponies, magicians, the works. He invited all the society reporters, making sure everyone witnessed what a devoted father he was. And you?" I smiled for the cameras like a dutiful daughter. She pushed food around her plate. "I've been smiling for cameras my entire life." Lorenzo remained silent for a moment. Then he spoke. "My sister used to say that people who project happiness are often the ones who understand sadness most profoundly." Elena looked up. "Your sister?" "Isabella. She died 6 years ago." His voice was carefully neutral, but Elena perceived the underlying weight. She was skilled at discerning emotions. "Better than me. What happened to her?" "That's a story for another night," Lorenzo concluded, rising to collect the empty containers. "Right now, we have something more pressing to address." He walked to the small closet near the door and retrieved a metal case Elena hadn't noticed before. As he opened it on the table, she saw a handgun nestled within foam padding, compact, black, lethal. Her stomach tightened. "What is that?" "A Glock 19, 9mm, 15-round magazine." Lorenzo lifted it with practiced ease, immediately checking the chamber. Standard issue for individuals who need self-defense and cannot afford an inaccurate shot. Lorenzo, I don't... Morelli's men are after you. So are your father's people. I can't be here 24/7. He set the gun down, looking at her seriously. If someone comes through that door when you are alone, you must know how to defend yourself. Elena stared at the weapon. It appeared smaller than guns in films, more real. I've never even held a gun. Then tonight, you learn. He spent the next 20 minutes instructing her on the fundamentals: proper grip, checking the loaded status, locating the safety. His explanations were precise, patient, and devoid of condescension. When he finally placed the unencumbered weapon in her hands, Elena was surprised by its weight. "It's heavier than I expected," she remarked. "Responsibility usually is." Lorenzo moved behind her, adjusting her grip. Two hands, firm but not tense. Align the sight's front post centered in the rear notch. Exhale slowly as you squeeze the trigger. Don't pull. Elena tried to concentrate on his instructions, but she was acutely aware of his proximity, how his voice had lowered to that teaching tone, patient and focused, and how his hand steadied hers without fully taking control. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "Teaching you to shoot. Trusting me with this." She glanced down at the gun in her hands. "I could point this at you right now." Lorenzo's hands withdrew. He moved around to face her, completely calm, utterly unafraid. "You could," he conceded, "but you won't." "How do you know?" "Because you trusted me with your life first." His gray eyes held hers. "That night in the car, you were terrified. You had no idea who I was, but you pleaded with me not to return you to your father. You entrusted your safety to a stranger because your instinct told you it was the correct choice." Elena's throat tightened. That was desperation, not trust. Sometimes they are the same thing. Lorenzo's expression softened, just slightly, but enough for Elena to notice. "You chose to trust me when you had nothing. Now, I'm choosing to trust you when I have everything to lose. That's what partners do." For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. The apartment was still, save for the distant sounds of the city. Sirens, traffic, life persisting, while they concealed themselves in the shadows. Then Lorenzo smiled. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet genuine. The first true smile she had witnessed from him since that rainy night at the bus terminal. "Besides," he added, "if you wanted to shoot me, you'd need to load the magazine first." Elena looked down at the empty gun in her hands and found herself smiling too. The first real smile she had managed in days. "I guess I need more lessons then." "I guess you do." Outside, the city hummed. Inside, two individuals who had spent their lives fleeing were learning what it meant to stand still. Elena had been confined to the apartment for 5 straight days. The walls were beginning to feel constricting. "I need to go out," she informed Marco during his afternoon supply drop. "Just for an hour, some fresh air, maybe pick up some groceries myself." Marco cautioned, "Boss won't approve." "Boss doesn't have to live in a box," Elena retorted, grabbing her jacket a thrift store find that made her indistinguishable from any other 20-something in the city. "I'll be careful. Baseball cap, sunglasses, a different route each time. You taught me that." Marco studied her, then sighed. 1 hour. Stay on crowded streets. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you call immediately. "I promise." She truly meant it. Yet, promises often faltered when the world decided to forcefully remind one of its inherent dangers. The grocery store was 3 blocks away, situated between a laundromat and a bodega. Elena kept her head down, her new brown hair tucked under a Yankees cap. She purchased simple items: bread, milk, instant coffee, canned soup, the kind of groceries Elena Costa would buy. Forgettable. She was 2 blocks from the apartment when she felt it. That familiar prickling sensation on the back of her neck, the undeniable feeling of being watched. Elena forced herself not to turn around. Instead, she paused at a shop window, using its reflection to scan the street behind her. Initially, nothing appeared out of the ordinary, just the typical urban frenzy of pedestrians and traffic. Then, her gaze locked onto them. 2 men, one in a gray jacket, the other in black. They had paused simultaneously with her, feigning interest in their phones, yet their posture betrayed them. Their alertness and focus were unnerving. Elena's heart pounded. She quickened her pace. The men mirrored her movement. She darted down a side street, then another, the afternoon crowd thinning with each turn. Fewer people, fewer witnesses. Foolish, she chastised herself. Utterly foolish. She fumbled for her phone, intending to call Marco, but before she could dial, a third man emerged from a doorway directly in front of her. His face bore a deep scar across his cheek. He smirked as she faltered. Sophia Carter, he announced. Not Elena, Sophia, you've been a tougher catch than we anticipated. Elena whirled around. The original two men had closed in behind her. The one in the gray jacket subtly drew a gun, keeping it low, out of sight of passing vehicles. Mr. Morelli wants a word with you, Scarface stated, advancing. About your new associate, Lorenzo Vitali. I have no idea what you're talking about, Elena retorted, backing until her spine met the cold brick wall. Trapped. Of course you don't. Gray jacket flanked her left. It's quite peculiar, isn't it? A girl vanishes, reappears in Vitali's territory the very night someone attempts to kill him, then disappears entirely again. That's hardly a coincidence. Black jacket moved to her right. You're coming with us. The easy way or the hard way. Your choice. Elena's hand instinctively found the small canister of pepper spray Marco had given her, nestled in her jacket pocket. Just in case, he'd said. Though, let's hope you never need it. What does Morelli want with me? She inquired, desperate to buy time. Leverage. Scarface grinned. Vitali's been elusive for 5 years, but everyone has a weakness, and right now, sweetheart, you're his. They were perilously close now, the scent of stale cigarette smoke and cheap cologne overwhelming. Elena gripped the spray, finger on the trigger. In an instant, chaos erupted. A black car screeched around the corner, tires protesting. Lorenzo's voice sliced through the air. Down. Elena dropped. Gunfire erupted. Gray jacket crumpled first, clutching his shoulder. Black jacket dived for cover behind a dumpster. Scarface lunged for Elena, but she twisted, dousing him directly in the eyes with the spray. He shrieked, stumbling backward. Lorenzo was out of the car, gun raised, his face etched with fury. He fired twice more, precise and controlled. Black jacket collapsed. Scarface, still clawing at his burning eyes, received a bullet in the leg. Stay down! Lorenzo barked at Elena. He advanced, checking bodies, expertly kicking weapons away. Gray jacket, still alive, groaned. Lorenzo pressed his gun to the man's forehead. How did you find her? Go to hell. The pain in Gray jacket's voice was evident. Lorenzo cocked the hammer. How? We've been monitoring all your properties, Gray jacket gasped. Morelli knows about every safe house, every location. This one, the warehouse, the place on 5th Street. We've had eyes everywhere for days. A wave of icy dread washed over Elena. All the safe houses. They know everything. Lorenzo's expression darkened. He pistol-whipped Gray jacket, rendering him unconscious, then turned to Elena. Can you walk? She nodded, her legs trembling. Car, now! He practically hauled her to the vehicle, shoving her into the back seat. Marco was already driving, phone pressed to his ear, barking orders. I don't care. Pull everyone out. All locations are compromised. Move. Lorenzo slid in beside Elena, immediately scanning her for injuries. Did they touch you? Are you hurt? I'm fine. What the hell were you thinking? The sheer intensity of his anger made her flinch. You went out alone, without backup. I was careful. Careful? Lorenzo's hands balled into fists. They were waiting for you, Sophia. They knew where to look. Don't call me that, she said quietly. Sophia's dead. The car swerved through traffic, Marco taking erratic turns, checking for pursuers. In the back seat, Lorenzo and Elena sat in a strained silence. Finally, Lorenzo broke it, his voice cold and measured. They used you as bait. Morelli knew if he found you first, I'd come. He was counting on it. But how did they find the apartment? You said no one knew about it. Someone talked, or someone's been watching me longer than I thought. Lorenzo pulled out his phone, scrolling furiously. 3 of my locations just got raided. Morelli's people hit them simultaneously 15 minutes ago. Elena felt sick to her stomach. While you were saving me, while you were being used as a distraction. Lorenzo met her gaze, and for the first time, she glimpsed something akin to fear beneath his anger. He's making his move. All of it. Your father's press conferences, the media coverage tracking you down. It was all designed to draw me out and expose my network. Marco glanced in the rearview mirror. Boss, where are we heading? We can't go back to any of the properties. Lorenzo was silent for a long moment. Then he uttered something that sent a chill down Elena's spine. We're going to the one place Morelli would never expect. He met Elena's eyes. We're going to where it all started, where my sister died. The villa perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean, an hour's drive north of the city. It possessed a haunting beauty, its white stone weathered by salt-laden air, windows dark, the garden a riot of overgrown wild roses, a place that seemed to hold memories captive. Lorenzo silenced the engine and remained motionless, his gaze fixed on the house. Boss, Marco said softly from the driver's seat. Give us an hour, check the perimeter, then keep watch from the road. Lorenzo's voice was flat, empty. No one knows about this place except you and me. And now her, Marco added, glancing at Elena in the back seat. Lorenzo looked at Elena, then truly saw her. A raw emotion flickered across his face. And now, her. Inside, the villa was a mausoleum of time. Dust cloaked everything, yet beneath it, Elena discerned meticulous touches. Long-dead fresh flowers in a vase, books neatly stacked on a coffee table, a blanket draped over a chair, as if someone had just risen and walked away. Lorenzo moved through the space like a revenant haunting his own past. He drew back curtains, allowing the weak morning light to filter in, illuminating swirling motes of dust. This was Isabella's, he finally said. My sister. She bought it 5 years ago with money from her photography business. Said she needed somewhere quiet, somewhere the family business couldn't touch her. Elena remained near the door, sensing the profound sacredness of the space. It's beautiful. She was murdered here. Lorenzo's tone remained even, but Elena saw his shoulders tense. 6 years ago, February 14th, Valentine's Day. She found that ironic, dying on a day dedicated to love. Lorenzo, Don Morelli did it personally. Lorenzo turned to face her, and Elena saw something profoundly shattered in his eyes. She wasn't involved in the business, never touched it. She was a photographer, for God's sake. She took pictures of birds and sunsets and called herself an artist. He walked to the mantelpiece where a framed photograph rested. It showed a young woman with Lorenzo's dark hair and sharp features, but with warmer eyes, laughing at something just out of frame. Morelli wanted to send a message. I'd refused to work with him, turned down his partnership offer, so he came here and he... Lorenzo's jaw tightened. He made it look like a robbery, but he left his signature, a gold coin in her hand. Old Sicilian tradition, blood. Elena felt tears sting her eyes. I'm so sorry. Everyone was sorry. Lorenzo's laugh was bitter. My family, my associates, even the cops who couldn't prove anything. Everyone sent flowers and said the right words. But sorry doesn't bring her back. Sorry doesn't make justice. Is that what this is? Justice? I don't know what this is anymore. Lorenzo sank into a chair, suddenly appearing utterly exhausted. I spent 6 years building power, forging alliances, eliminating threats, becoming someone Morelli couldn't touch. I told myself I was protecting what was left of my family, protecting my people. You were? No. He looked up at her. I was building a cage. A bigger, prettier cage than the one Morelli wanted to put me in, but still a cage. I used to think fear kept people loyal, that if everyone was afraid of me, they'd never betray me like my father's people betrayed him. Elena moved closer, perching on the edge of the coffee table. And now I realize fear only keeps people silent. Lorenzo's voice dropped to a near whisper. Isabella wasn't afraid of anything. She lived exactly how she wanted, loved who she wanted, said what she thought. She was free in a way I never was. And Morelli killed her because her freedom made me vulnerable. The ocean crashed against the rocks outside. The villa felt as if it held its breath. After she died, Lorenzo continued, I stopped letting people close. I stopped trusting anyone except Marco. I built walls so high that nothing could hurt me. He met Elena's eyes. And then you climbed into my car, terrified and desperate, and asked me not to take you back. You trusted a stranger with a gun because anything was better than the cage you were running from. I didn't have a choice. Neither did I. Not really. Lorenzo leaned forward, hands clasped. You remind me of her, of Isabella. That same defiance, that refusal to be owned. Elena felt a shift within her chest. I'm not your sister, Lorenzo. I know. He smiled sadly. Isabella would have liked you, though. She always said the world needed more women who knew how to fight back. Elena recalled the past week, learning to shoot, mastering the art of concealment, transforming into someone new. She remembered the men in the alley, the surge of fear, the jolt of adrenaline. She recalled Lorenzo's hands studying hers, instructing her on survival. Then let's make some noise, she declared firmly. Lorenzo looked up. What? You said fear keeps people silent. So let's make noise, Elena said, rising, a sudden surge of energy animating her. Morelli thinks he's won. My father views me as incapable. Both of them anticipate our retreat, our fear, our concealment. No, listen. She continued to pace, her thoughts vocalized. They are orchestrating a narrative, controlling its every twist. Eris is gone, a dangerous criminal, a tragic tale. But what if we rewrite that narrative? What if we cease our hiding and begin our counterattack? Lorenzo too rose, a spark of hope igniting in his eyes. You're proposing going public. I'm suggesting we unveil everything. Your father's illicit financial dealings, Morelli's entire operation, the corruption, the whole sordid truth. Elena's voice gained momentum. I can access my father's extensive files. You possess crucial evidence against Morelli. We cease playing their game and initiate our own. For the first time since their arrival at the villa, Lorenzo appeared entirely engaged, fully alive. That's a declaration of war. Once we embark on this, there's no turning back. Excellent, Elena smiled. I'm quite weary of looking backward anyway. Lorenzo observed her intently for an extended moment. Then he traversed the room, extending his hand, not for a fleeting handshake this time, but for something more profound, a solemn compact. Then let us unleash upon them a conflict they will never forget. Elena clasped his hand. Beyond the window, the sun ascended over the ocean, painting the water in hues of gold. In that precise instant, within the dwelling of a deceased woman, alongside a man shattered by sorrow, Elena experienced a sensation alien to her for years: purpose. By nightfall, they had returned to the city. Not to any of Lorenzo's familiar haunts, but to a rented office situated above a perpetually open diner in a district where inquiries were conspicuously absent. Marco had orchestrated the setup within hours: laptops, disposable phones, and a direct conduit to Lorenzo's most trusted associates. Elena sat at a desk, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She had been immersed in this task for 3 uninterrupted hours, her coffee growing cold beside her as she navigated the labyrinthine security of her father's encrypted files. How's it progressing? Lorenzo inquired, placing a fresh cup of coffee before her. I'm in. Elena's voice was taut with concentration. But he's grown more cunning. He's altered some passwords, added extra security layers. It's consuming more time than I anticipated. We have sufficient time. Do we? She looked up. Morelli is aware of our general whereabouts. Your safe houses have been compromised. How long until he locates us here? Lorenzo drew a chair beside her. Then work with greater speed. She shot him a glance, then redirected her attention to the screen. There, that's the waterfront development folder, the one I previously mentioned. Elena clicked through the files: contracts, invoices, payment schedules. At first glance, everything appeared legitimate. Carter Construction receiving payments for materials, labor, permit standard business practice. But Elena possessed the discerning eye to uncover anomalies. Years of observing her father's operations had illuminated his characteristic patterns. Here, she stated, pulling up a spreadsheet. Observe these vendor payments: Suncoast Materials, Premier Steel Supply, Harbor Logistics, all seemingly legitimate company names, but they are mere shells. Look at the payment amounts, consistently just under $10,000. That is the reporting threshold. Anything exceeding $10,000 triggers federal banking regulations. Her fingers danced across the keys, retrieving additional files. And consider this. Suncoast Materials was registered a mere 3 days before its initial payment. No prior history, no previous contracts, no physical address beyond a post office box. Lorenzo leaned closer, scrutinizing the display. How much? Elena brought up a summary sheet. Over the past 18 months, approximately $14 million has been funneled through these shell companies, and observe where the money subsequently goes. She displayed bank transfer records. The funds moved through several accounts, each transaction meticulously structured, before ultimately settling in accounts registered to Morelli Holdings. That's it, Lorenzo stated quietly. That's undeniable proof. Your father has been laundering Morelli's money through construction contracts. It gets even better, Elena declared, opening another file. These emails demonstrate my father's full awareness of his actions. He has correspondence with an individual named MV. I presume that's someone within Morelli's organization. They discuss payment schedules, project timelines, and strategies for structuring transactions to evade federal oversight. Lorenzo retrieved his phone. I know an independent journalist. She spent 5 years attempting to expose Morelli, but could never acquire concrete evidence. This is precisely what she requires. Will she safeguard her source? With her very life, Lorenzo began typing. She'll undoubtedly verify everything before publishing, but once this story goes live, the FBI will be compelled to investigate. Your father's empire will crumble, Morelli's connections will be exposed, and I will finally achieve my freedom, Elena concluded. She executed a few more keystrokes, compiling all the files into an encrypted folder. Send her all of this. Emails, bank records, shell company registrations. It's all here. Lorenzo forwarded the package, then made a quick call. Elena couldn't discern his words, but his tone was urgent, intense. When he disconnected, he regarded her with something akin to admiration. She has it. She claims she can have a story ready in 6 hours. She'll publish online first, then send everything to federal prosecutors. Elena felt a tension release in her chest. It's truly happening. Not yet. Lorenzo rose, pacing. Publishing the evidence is merely step one, but Morelli will not fall without a fierce struggle. Once that story breaks, he'll know we're responsible. He'll come for us with everything at his disposal. So, what is our next move? Lorenzo's expression hardened. We don't wait for him to locate us. We lure him out. Tonight. He retrieved his phone again, initiating another call. This time, Elena overheard his side of the conversation. It's Vitali. I possess information Morelli desires. Details concerning high-value merchandise shipments arriving through the port next week. A pause. Inform him I am willing to negotiate. Neutral ground, the abandoned dock on Pier 17, midnight. Just him and me. He hung up and looked at Elena. Morelli has coveted access to those shipping routes for years. He won't be able to resist this bait. You're setting a trap. We're setting a trap. Lorenzo checked his weapon, then handed Elena the Glock she'd been training with. The journalist publishes her story at midnight, precisely when Morelli believes he's meeting me to negotiate. The FBI will be monitoring every communicative channel once that story breaks. If Morelli appears at the docks, he walks directly into federal custody. Elena checked her own weapon, her hands remarkably steadier now than they had been a week prior. But he won't arrive alone. Neither will I. Lorenzo regarded her seriously. Marco is already positioning our people around the perimeter, but, Elena, I need you to remain hidden. If this goes awry, you'll require backup. She met his gaze. I am not sitting idly by while you risk everything. This is not a negotiation. No, it isn't, Elena declared, squaring her shoulders. We are partners, remember? I do not hide while you fight my battles. Lorenzo studied her for an extended moment. Then, to her surprise, he smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his entire face. Isabella would have genuinely liked you. He extended his hand. Elena took it, feeling the calluses, the strength, the embedded trust. We end this tonight, Lorenzo stated quietly. Your freedom, my peace. Our war, Elena added. Outside, the city glittered with lights. Somewhere out there, Don Morelli was receiving a message he had awaited for years. Somewhere, a journalist was poised to dismantle an empire with words and irrefutable evidence. And somewhere between the vice of fear and the promise of freedom, 2 individuals who had spent their lives in flight prepared to make their final stand. The clock inexorably ticked toward midnight. Pier 17 at 11:30 p.m. resembled an apocalyptic landscape. Rusted shipping containers, stacked like metallic tombstones. Broken cranes reaching imploringly toward a moonless sky. Water lapped against rotted wooden pilings, its sound hollow and unnerving. Elena crouched behind a container, 50 yards from the designated meeting point. A radio earpiece in place, a Glock firmly in her hand. From this vantage, she could observe Lorenzo standing beneath a lone, flickering streetlight alone and utterly exposed. Marco and 4 other men were stationed around the perimeter, virtually invisible within the deep shadows. "Comms check," Marco's voice crackled in her ear. "Copy," Elena whispered, her heart pounding with such force she could feel it reverberating in her throat. "Elena, remember?" Lorenzo's voice came through, calm and steady. "You are our eyes. If you detect anything amiss, you report it. Do not attempt to be a hero." "The same applies to you," she retorted. At 11:45, headlights pierced the pervasive darkness. 3 black SUVs rolled onto the pier, moving slowly, with deliberate purpose. They halted 30 feet from Lorenzo, their engines idling. Elena's fingers tightened around her weapon. The doors opened, and men streamed out. 8, 10, 12, all armed, all moving with military precision. "That's a greater number than we anticipated," Marco muttered over the radio. Then the final door opened, and Don Morelli himself emerged. Even from this distance, Elena could comprehend why people feared him. He was shorter than she had imagined, perhaps 60 years old, yet he moved with an absolute, unshakable confidence. Silver hair, an expensive suit, a face that appeared to have been sculpted from stone and unyielding cruelty. "Vitali," Morelli's voice carried clearly across the dock. "You have been difficult to reach. I've been preoccupied with staying alive." Lorenzo's hands remained visible, conspicuously empty. "You desired port access. I am offering it. Let us discuss the terms." Morelli's laughter was devoid of humor. "Terms? Do you truly believe you are in a position to negotiate?" He snapped his fingers. More men materialized from behind the containers sheltering Lorenzo, 4 of them effectively cutting off his retreat. Elena's stomach plummeted. They had been waiting, hidden. "It's a trap," she hissed into the radio. "Hold positions," Marco commanded. "Wait for my signal." "I am not here to negotiate," Lorenzo stated as Morelli stepped closer. "I am here to collect a debt. 6 years I have waited. 6 years since you refused my partnership. Since you rendered yourself untouchable. But everyone eventually becomes touchable. Like Isabella." Lorenzo's voice turned frigid. "Your sister was a message you chose not to heed." Morelli produced a gold coin, flipping it in his hand. "So, I dispatched another message. The Carter girl. You formed an attachment, Lorenzo." "That was your error," Morelli declared, his words chilling Elena's blood. He knew, he had always known. "Where is she?" Morelli pressed. "Produce her, and perhaps your death will be swift." Lorenzo remained motionless. "She's gone, secreted away somewhere safe. You will never locate her." "Lying does not suit you," Morelli retorted. With a crude gesture, 2 of his enforcers seized Lorenzo's arms, forcing him to his knees. "Last opportunity. Where is the girl?" It was then Elena noticed them, red laser dots, triangulating on Lorenzo's chest from 3 distinct angles. "Snipers!" she shrieked into her radio. "Containers! North side! 3 shooters!" The pier erupted in pandemonium. Marco's men unleashed a volley of gunfire, met instantly by Morelli's retaliatory fusillade. Muzzle flashes pulsed like lightning, bullets ricocheting off metal surfaces. Lorenzo twisted, wrenching free from his captors. One assailant collapsed. The other stumbled back as Lorenzo produced a handgun from his ankle holster. Elena dashed, moving stealthily toward a tactical vantage point. She observed one sniper recalibrating his aim, the crimson beam tracking Lorenzo as he plunged behind a colossal crate. Without hesitation, she raised her Glock and fired. Her initial shot went wide. The second struck the container beside the sniper. The third caught him squarely in the shoulder, eliciting a shriek as he dropped his rifle. "Elena, fall back!" Lorenzo's voice crackled with fear, but she was rooted. 2 of Morelli's men were outflanking Marco's position. She discharged 2 more rounds, forcing them to seek cover. Then, someone seized her from behind. Elena's rigorous training kicked in. She thrust her elbow backward, hearing a guttural grunt, then pivoted and fired point-blank into her attacker's leg. He collapsed, howling in agony. "I've got 3 on me!" Marco yelled. "Southwest corner!" A burst of automatic gunfire abruptly silenced him. Elena's heart plummeted. Then Marco's voice returned, breathless but undeniably alive. "I'm good. They are not." Lorenzo was now advancing, closing in on Morelli. However, one of the snipers had repositioned, and Elena saw the red dot settle ominously on Lorenzo's back. "Lorenzo, down!" He instinctively dropped, the bullet intended for his spine embedding itself in the container behind him. Elena fired at the sniper twice, forcing him to duck back and lose his sightline. Lorenzo sprang up, resumed his charge, and tackled Morelli. Both men crashed violently to the ground. The ensuing struggle was savage and desperate. Morelli's hands found Lorenzo's wounded side, pressing hard. Lorenzo gasped, his face paling. Yet he relentlessly drove his fist into Morelli's jaw. Once, then twice. Elena sprinted toward them, but a hulking, scarred man, one of Morelli's enforcers, blocked her path, raising his weapon. She was quicker. 3 shots, center mass, and he crumpled. At that moment, sirens wailed. Police, federal agents, the entire dock became a kaleidoscope of flashing red and blue lights. The journalist's explosive story, released precisely at midnight, had galvanized every law enforcement agency in the city. "FBI, drop your weapons!" Morelli's men scattered, some returning fire, others fleeing. Lorenzo stumbled away from Morelli, gasping, blood saturating his shirt. As Morelli attempted to escape, Elena stepped into his path, her gun raised, her hand steady. "It's over," she stated. Morelli's hand darted towards his jacket. Lorenzo's shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. Federal agents swarmed, tackling Morelli to the ground, cuffing him amidst his furious curses and threats. Lorenzo swayed. Elena caught him before he fell. "I'm okay," he gasped. "Just the old wound reopened." "You got shot again, didn't you?" Elena retorted. "Maybe a little bit." He managed a pained smile. "But you saved me. That sniper would have—" "We saved each other," Elena finished, supporting his weight as Marco rushed over. "That's what partners do." Around them, federal agents were rounding up Morelli's crew. Someone read Morelli his rights. Another secured the chaotic scene. The war was definitively over. They had triumphed. They drove back to the villa as dawn painted the sky in hues of gold and rose. Lorenzo had adamantly refused an ambulance and hospital care. Too many questions, he'd gritted through clenched teeth. Instead, Marco had tended to his wounds in the car, the old one reopened, plus a fresh graze across his ribs from a dangerously close bullet. By the time they reached Isabella's villa, Lorenzo's face was ashen from blood loss and sheer exhaustion. Elena and Marco practically carried him inside, laying him gently on the couch. The medical supplies Marco had strategically stashed there months ago were still pristine. Elena's hands trembled as she helped clean his wounds, watching Lorenzo's jaw clench with each touch. "You should be in a hospital," she repeated for the 10th time. "I'll live." His voice, though weak, remained steady. "I always survive." Marco stepped back, surveying his impromptu triage. "You need rest, boss. Real rest. No moving for at least 48 hours. "Can't. Too much to do." "Lorenzo," Elena began. "The journalist's story is everywhere," Marco interjected, checking his phone. Every major outlet picked it up. "The FBI has already raided 3 of Morelli's properties. Your father's offices are swarming with federal agents. They're both finished." A strange emptiness settled over Elena at the news. She ought to feel victorious, vindicated, free. Instead, she felt only profound weariness. "What about me?" she asked quietly. "The kidnapping story, the missing person reports." Marco and Lorenzo exchanged a knowing glance. "I took care of it," Lorenzo said. "I called in a favor with a federal prosecutor I know. We explained that you were fleeing an arranged marriage, that you left voluntarily. With your father's empire collapsing and his credibility shattered, no one's going to press charges. So, I can go home?" "There is no home." Lorenzo's gray eyes met hers. "Your family's assets are frozen. The mansion will likely be seized. Your father's looking at 20 years minimum. You're free, Elena. Completely free. The words should have brought liberation. Instead, they felt like falling. I'll give you two some privacy, Marco said, heading for the door. I'll be outside if you need anything. Once they were alone, the villa felt oppressively quiet. Ocean waves crashed rhythmically against the cliffs, and the dawn light dappled across the dusty floors. Elena sat in a chair opposite Lorenzo, suddenly unable to meet his gaze. What happens now? Now? Lorenzo chuckled, though it quickly devolved into a wince. Now I disappear. Her head snapped up. What? Morelli's in custody, but his organization isn't gone. He has lieutenants, soldiers, people who will seek revenge. Lorenzo shifted, attempting to sit straighter. The FBI will eventually want me to testify. That makes me a target for everyone. Morelli's people, corrupt cops, anyone who benefited from the old system. So you run. So I disappear. New identity, new city, new life. His expression remained carefully neutral. It's all arranged. Marco has everything ready. By tomorrow night, Lorenzo Vitali will be a ghost. Elena felt something fracture within her chest. Just like that? Just like that. And me? Her voice came out smaller than intended. What about me? That Lorenzo looked at her then, truly looked at her, and Elena saw everything he left unsaid etched in those gray eyes. If I stay, he said quietly, they'll come for you next. They'll use you to reach me, hurt you to harm me. I've already lost one person. He stopped, jaw tight. I won't lose another. I'm not Isabella. No, you're not. Lorenzo reached into his jacket, wincing at the movement, and produced an envelope. But you're still someone I care about, someone who deserves more than being collateral damage in my war. He handed her the envelope. Inside, Elena discovered a passport, her face, but a different name, Claire Bennett, 23 years old, born in Portland. There was also a deed, a property deed for a small, fully paid cafe in a coastal town 3 hours north. Her name, Claire Bennett's name, was on the title. What is this? Elena whispered. Your second chance. Lorenzo's voice was rough. The cafe's been closed for a year, but it's structurally sound. It needs work, but nothing you can't handle. Small town, quiet, safe. A place where no one knows Sophia Carter or Lorenzo Vitali, where you can decide what a free life actually looks like. Tears welled in Elena's eyes. You're giving me a cafe? I'm giving you a choice. You can go anywhere, be anyone. But if you want somewhere to start, he gestured to the deed. Isabella always said, everyone needs a place that feels like home, a place that's completely yours. Lorenzo, you're not the monster they say, the words burst from Elena. The news, the stories, the reputation, you're not that person. Yes, I am. Lorenzo's expression hardened. I've killed people, Elena, hurt people, built an empire on fear and violence. The man who saved you in that parking lot is still the same man who's been fighting a war for 6 years. That doesn't just disappear. Then why does it feel like you're the only person who's ever actually seen me? The question hung in the air between them. Lorenzo's facade cracked, and for a moment, Elena saw past the walls he had meticulously constructed, saw the grief, the profound loneliness, the desperate yearning for something genuine in a life built on deceit. Because you're the only person who sees me too, he finally said. They sat in silence. The sunrise flooded the room with golden light, illuminating dust motes and a space between them that felt both boundless and impossibly small. I should go, Elena said, even though every fiber of her being yearned to stay. You should, Lorenzo agreed, not moving. Elena stood clutching the envelope. She walked to the door, her hand on the knob. Then she paused. Will I ever see you again? Lorenzo was silent for so long, she almost believed he wouldn't answer. No, he finally said. That's the point. Elena nodded, her throat too tight for words. She opened the door. Elena. She turned back. Lorenzo was gazing at her, the way a drowning man looks at the shore, desperate and resigned all at once. You gave me something I haven't had in 6 years, he said. You gave me peace. And you gave me freedom, Elena whispered. She walked out into the dawn, leaving behind the man who had saved her and the life she had never truly desired. In the solitude of his deceased sister's villa, Lorenzo Vitali, wounded but alive, watched the sunrise, uncertain if he would witness another. Some farewells are fleeting. This one felt destined to last an eternity. 6 months later, Claire Bennett awoke to the familiar cries of seagulls and the rhythm of waves. Her cafe, nestled on the edge of Harborview, a quaint coastal town of 3,000 inhabitants with a single main street, was her sanctuary. It was the sort of place where everyone knew everyone, yet no one questioned the quiet woman who had transformed the old Morrison property into a charming establishment. Elena, now firmly Claire, stretched and gazed out her bedroom window, overseeing the cafe. The boundless ocean, an expanse of gray-blue in the early morning light, stretched before her. Her nightmares had ceased 3 weeks prior, and she had stopped looking over her shoulder 2 weeks before that. Freedom, she had come to realize, manifested in small, precious moments. Brewing her own coffee, setting her own hours, accountable to no one. She dressed in self-chosen jeans and a plain sweater, purchased with her own earnings, and descended the stairs. The cafe's renovation had spanned 4 months. She had undertaken most of the work herself, mastering wall painting and furniture, refinishing through YouTube tutorials and sheer tenacity. The space was compact, yet inviting, adorned with an eclectic mix of chairs, local artwork gracing exposed brick walls, and a menu board she updated daily based on her baking whims. Yesterday, lemon scones; today, blueberry muffins, thanks to the fresh berries from the farmer's market. At exactly 7 a.m., she flipped the sign to "Open." Her first regular, Mrs. Chun, arrived promptly for her usual black coffee and the morning newspaper. "Morning, Claire," she greeted, settling into her customary corner table. "Morning, Mrs. Chun." "The usual, please, dear," she affirmed. Claire poured the coffee, placed the newspaper on the table, and returned to her muffins. This, she reflected, was her life now. Simple, authentic, her own. Around noon, amidst the lunch rush, 15 patrons constituted a rush in Harbor View. Claire caught a headline on a discarded newspaper: Carter, construction founder, sentenced to 22 years. She bypassed the article, finding no need to delve into its details. Her father's empire had crumbled precisely as Lorenzo had foretold. The exposé had unleashed federal investigations into a multitude of corrupt officials, contractors, and business associates. Her mother had divorced him within a month, fleeing to Europe with any assets not frozen. Sophia Carter no longer existed, nor, for that matter, did that family. Claire wiped down the counter, her thoughts already moving on. At 3 p.m., Mrs. Rodriguez arrived with her book club. At 4 p.m., the high school multitude descended for hot chocolate and Wi-Fi. By 5:30, Claire began her cleanup, preparing for an early closing. Fridays were typically slow, and she had promised herself she would witness the sunset today. That's when her gaze landed on a newspaper left on table 6. A different paper, a different headline. Alleged crime boss Lorenzo Vitali believed dead in dock explosion. Claire's hands froze, gripping the coffee pot. She snatched the paper, reading frantically. An explosion at Pier 17, 3 weeks prior. A federal investigation. No body recovered, yet witnesses had reported seeing Vitali's car enveloped in flames. Authorities presumed him dead, officially closing the case. The coffee pot slipped from her grasp, shattering on the floor. Claire stood amid scattered ceramic and spilled coffee, staring at words that irrevocably shifted her world. Dead. Lorenzo was dead. But 3 weeks ago? Why was she only discovering this now? And something in the article felt off, too convenient, too neat. With trembling hands, she cleaned the mess, locked the cafe door, and flipped the open sign to closed. The sun was setting, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and purple. Claire stepped onto the sidewalk, inhaling the salty air, striving to process what she had just read. Then she saw it. A black car idling across the street, its engine softly purring. No driver was visible, no license plate decipherable from her distance. Claire's heart lurched. She walked towards it slowly, as if in a dream. The car was empty, completely vacant, but on the windshield, tucked under the wiper, was a piece of paper. With trembling fingers, she retrieved it. The handwriting was instantly recognizable, strong, precise, unmistakably his. You gave me peace. I gave you freedom. Don't look back. Claire pressed the note to her chest, tears streaming down her face. She scanned the empty street. No one. Just the ocean, the sunset, and a car that likely wouldn't be there if she looked again in 5 minutes. He was alive. Lorenzo was alive. And he had kept his promise. He had vanished so utterly that even death could not claim him. He had granted her freedom, true freedom, devoid of conditions, debts, or obligations. She reread the note. Don't look back. Claire remained at that street corner as the sun dipped into the ocean, clutching a message from a ghost. Harborview continued its evening routine. Tourists heading to dinner, locals walking their dogs, the world turning as always. But Claire Bennett was not turning. She was standing still, grounded, finally certain. She was free. Free from her father's manipulation, from arranged marriages, from the gilded cage of Sophia Carter's existence. Free from fear, from perpetual flight, from silence. Lorenzo Vitali had bestowed this upon her, and in return, she had gifted him peace, the assurance that someone he cared for had survived the war intact. Claire carefully folded the note and tucked it into her pocket. She looked at the black car one last time, really looked, imprinting it in her memory, then deliberately turned away. She walked back to her cafe,